Welcome back, parents, to our COVID-19 workshop series. Before I get started, let me reintroduce myself a little bit. My name is Xinwei, and I am a mental health therapist from Just Helps in Bayview, and I'm also a child and family specialist at Maria Park Jody Center. So today we're going to be talking about what are tantrums and meltdowns, and how can we assist our children when they're struggling emotionally. Or what kind of skills can we teach them, especially during this special time? And following with this workshop series, we'll be talking about the common parenting traps and what to do when siblings won't stop fighting. For future topics, I'll be posting the following workshop links to YouTube as well. So please let me know if there are other topics that you would love to get to know a little bit more. We'll be more than willing to research about them and present them to you. So let's get started. Speaking of tantrums and outbursts, it's very important that we, according to Ms. Caroline Miller, that we try to get to know them as the first step to further reduce the outbursts. So there's no doubt that tantrums and meltdowns are some of the biggest challenges of parenting, especially during this time when we'll tend to lack of a structure or routine, or us as parents, we have to not only be the parent in the house, we have to also be the homeschool teacher, basically. So tantrums and meltdowns can be very hard to understand, hard to prevent, and maybe right now we're seeing them increasing in our households, and even harder to respond effectively, especially when they're happening at the moment. So today we're going to talk about how to conquer them, starting by knowing what they really are. So we usually use the word tantrum to describe outbursts who are actually milder. So during which a child could still have some measure of control over their own behaviors. The thing with tantrum is that it's likely to subside if no one is paying attention to it, which is kind of the opposite to a meltdown, especially during which a child completely lose their control, and their behaviors can only get stopped when they finally get what they want, and then they will calm down. So whether it's mild or severe, tantrums are symptoms that a child is struggling with emotions that they couldn't really regulate. So kind of like anger, of course, is the number one emotion that child loses their head or blows up. So we can kind of like think it as a kid version of having road rage and we just couldn't really handle it. So the child feels he or she may deserve or need something that is being deliberately withheld from them. It could be a cookie. It could be the video game, or it could be simply the toy we don't want to get for them in the toy store. And it is overwhelming for them, and it looks like it's very frustrating, and they would interpret it as like, hey, it's not fair. And also, we have to take into consideration of anxiety. It's another big trigger. It causes our kids to freak out, overriding the logic that they will enable them to see, hey, the anxiety is out of proportion to the situation. So by moving forward, I would love to talk a little bit more about the underlying causes of emotion regulation. So when children don't really develop certain emotional regulation skills as part of their normal developmental or growth, the causes can be varied. And the thing is, there's no such thing in psychology called as tantrum disorder or meltdown disorder. Tantrums and meltdowns are kind of like fevers or flus. They can be triggered by so many different problems that we can't make them to stop until we really understand what's triggering them. So sometimes the inability to regulate emotion is a result of an underlying problem. So let me introduce some of the most common causes of the frequent meltdowns. The first one is ADHD. So apparently, according to a recent study, it shows that more than 75% of the kids who present with severe temper outbursts also their symptoms or their behaviors also fit the criteria for ADHD. ADHD means attentive deficit hyperactive disorder, which doesn't necessarily mean the kids who diagnosed with ADHD who are diagnosed with ADHD, in fact, the disorder may be overlooked in the kids who have a history of aggression. So what people don't really understand that a lack of focus, the inability to complete the work, to tolerate the boredom, among other symptoms, can contribute to the escalation toward the explosive outbursts. So we have to get to know the underlying causes a little bit more so we can know what to do. And another common underlying cause for the meltdowns and tantrums is anxiety. It is a huge contributor, even if kids don't really have a full-blown anxiety or disorder or like a full-blown panic attack. They may still be overreactive to anxiety-provoking situations and having meltdowns when they're stressed. Kids who have an undiagnosed learning disability, who have suffered from trauma or certain type of neglect before, may react this way when being confronted with an uncomfortable or painful situation. And another huge part is the learning problems. So when your child is acting out repeatedly in school or during homework time, it is possible that the kid may have an undiagnosed learning disorder. So let's say if our kid has a lot of trouble with math, the math problems are making them very frustrated or irritated. Other than asking for proper help properly, our kid may rip up the assignment or start doing something with another kid to create a diversion from the real issues. And those could be the flags that our kids are struggling with certain type of learning problems. And it's definitely worth exploring about. Another big part is depression and irritability as a form of underlying causes. We don't see depression that pervasive in preschoolers because behavioral-wise, symptom-wise, it's not really developed to fit the full criteria of depression, but irritability also occur as a subset of kids who have severe and frequent temper tantrums. So a new disorder called DMDD, which is disruptive mood dysregulation disorder, describe the kids who have severe outbursts with chronic severe irritability in between. So kids who are highly irritable are kind of like the water at 90 degrees. They're always boiling. Parents of this kid are always like walking on the eggshells because they respond to very subtle things, like the slightest thing. They're afraid it might set their kids off. And another huge underlying cause could be the autism. So for kids who are on the autism spectrum, are often more prone to have dramatic meltdowns. So those kids who tend to be more rigid, who are very dependent, or who function a little better when there's a consistent routine, is because they are using them as their form of emotional support or emotional comfort. And any kind of like unexpected change can set them off easily, and they may lack the language and communication skills to really express what they need and what they want. The last but not the least, another huge factor is the sensory processing issues. The sensory processing challenges, we can often see them more commonly in autistic kids, as well as kids with ADHD. They might cause the children to be more overwhelmed by certain type of stimulation. So for instance, it could be some of the kids are very sensitive toward touching. It could be they're very sensitive to hearing or certain type of feelings, which increase the chances that they are highly alert pretty much all the time, and which means their anxiety level is always on the verge. Which kind of increases the chance of them having meltdowns and tantrums. So regardless of the triggers, we are trying to take a look at the skills the kids might be lacking at, so we know where to target for them to change so we can decrease the chances of having outbursts. So most of the mental health professionals believe that children who have frequent emotional outbursts are lacking certain type of skills listed below, which can cause the frustration, anxiety, or anger very easily. So the skills the kids who struggle with emotion dysregulation could potentially be lacking are impulse control, problem solving, delaying gratification, negotiating, communicating their wishes and their needs to adults, knowing what's appropriate or expected in a given situation, self-soothing. So if it's really hard for your kid to control themselves, it will be harder for them to control themselves emotionally as well. If your kid struggles with problem-solving skills, it's just easier for them to freak out when they don't know what to do. For kids who struggle with delaying gratification, they may struggle with patience. So whenever the stressful situation is coming up, if they're not getting figured out immediately, they could get impatient very easily and getting very emotional. Negotiating and communicating skills is kind of like fall under the same category. If they don't really know how to express themselves as a form of like outlet, it just could be easier for them to bottle up their feelings and end up having a blast. And also self-soothing and knowing what's appropriate is also very important. If they don't really know how to calm themselves down, it's just easier for them to have lashing outs. And another huge part today we want to mention is a good deal of tantrum behaviors we as parents see, we think they're intentional. We think they're kind of manipulative because they want to get what they have. But actually, they are much less voluntary than they realize. That is not to say that it isn't learned behaviors though. So for children with serious temper problems who aren't consciously calculating throwing tantrums, but they may have learned that through certain reinforcement from the surrounding adults, the tantrums they throw get certain type of results. So there's no question that children who haven't outgrown their tantrums do have lagging skills in emotional regulation. And also the weakness can be worsened by conditional learning. So for instance, let's say if a kid encounters with a problem and doesn't know how to handle it properly, and then it leads to a tantrum, he or she may just learn that, hey, over time, throwing a tantrum helps me to get what I want. So somehow it just becomes a vicious cycle because instead of practicing the healthier way, the appropriate way, that the kids need to put in some type of work to learn to solve the problems as a team. So instead of doing that, the kids, however, they're learning the maladaptive responses when they get frustrated. And by continuing to practice those unhealthy choices, they're actually strengthening these behaviors over time and using them in a greater number of situations. So here comes the questions. As parents, how can we help our kids? Whatever the cause is, while it is definitely recommended that in managing outbursts, the first step is understanding the triggers and testing the ways the environment can be changed to reduce the incidence of outbursts. That is saying, when it comes to looking for ways to adjust a child's environment, parents are very important. And that is not to say that we blame parents for the tantrums the kids are having, because parents are only part of what's going into a child's behavior patterns, along with temperament and development. But parents' behaviors are probably the most adjustable part on our end. So it is most recommended as the most powerful tool that we can have and we can take control of to help our kids. And that will be the content for today's workshop. And parents, if you have any questions or you have any feedback regarding this workshop, please feel free to let me know. And if you see what we mentioned today earlier during the session is actually what your kids are going through right now, please just send me an email or shoot me a text message. I'll be more than willing to help. So here's the content of today. And I'm very looking forward to hearing back from you, and have a good one. I'll see you very soon.